双语音标领航，注音阅读启蒙，叶兴阳有声读物。
History of Friedrich II of Prussia, v5. By Thomas Carlyle. Carlyle's History of Friedrich II of Prussia. Book V. Double Marriage Project. And what element it fell into. 1723-1726. Chapter 1. Double marriage is decided on. We saw George I at Berlin in October 1723, looking out upon his little grandson drilling the cadets there, but we did not mention what important errand had brought His Majesty thither. Visits between Hanover and Berlin had been frequent for a long time back. The young Queen of Prussia, sometimes with her husband, sometimes without, running often over to see her father, who, even after his accession to the English crown, was generally for some months every year to be met with in those favorite regions of his. He himself did not much visit, being of taciturn, splenetic nature, but this once he had agreed to return a visit they had lately made him, where a certain weighty business had been agreed upon, withal, which His Britannic Majesty was to consummate formally, by treaty, when the meeting in Berlin took effect. His Britannic Majesty, accordingly, is come. The business in hand is no other than that thrice-famous double marriage of Prussia with England, which once had such a sound in the ear of rumor, and still bulks so big in the archives of the 18th century, which worked such woe to all parties concerned in it, and is, in fact, a first-rate nuisance in the history of that poor century, as written hitherto, nuisance demanding urgently to be abetted, were that well possible at present, which, alas, it is not, to any great degree, there being an important young Friedrich inextricably wrapped up in it, to whom it was of such vital or almost fatal importance. Without a Friedrich, the affair could be reduced to something like its real size, and recorded in a few pages, or might even, with advantage, be forgotten altogether, and become zero. More gigantic instance of much ado about nothing has seldom occurred in human annals, had not there been a Friedrich in the heart of it. Crown Prince Friedrich is still very young for marriage speculations on his score, but Mamma has thought good to take matters in time. And so we shall, in the next ensuing parts of this poor history, have to hear almost as much about marriage as in the foolishest 3-volume novel, and almost to still less purpose. For indeed, in that particular, Friedrich's young life may be called a romance flung hells overhead, marriage being the one event there, round which all events turn, but turn in the inverse or reverse way, as if the devil were in them. Not only towards no happy goal for him or Mamma, or us, but at last towards hardly any goal at all for anybody. So mad did the affair grow, and is so madly recorded in those inextricable, dateless, chaotic books, we have now come to regions of narrative which seem to consist of murky nothingness put on boil, not land, or water, or air, or fire, but a tumultuously whirling commixture of all the four, of immense extent too, which must be got crossed, in some human manner. Courage, patience, good reader. Queen Sophie Dorothy has taken time by the forelock. Already, for a dozen years, this matter has been treated of. Queen Sophie Dorothy, ever since the birth of her Wilhelmina, has had the notion of it, and, on her first visit afterwards to Hanover, proposed it to Princess Caroline, Queen Caroline of England, who is to be, and who in due course was, an excellent accomplished Brandenburg-Ansbach lady, familiar from of old in the Prussian court. You, Caroline, cousin dear, have a little prince, Fritz, or let us call him Fred, since he is to be English, little Fred, who will one day, if all go right, be King of England. He is 2 years older than my little Wilhelmina. Why should not they wed, and the two chief Protestant houses and nations thereby be united? Princess Caroline was very willing, so was Elector Sophie, the great-grandmother of both the parties. So were the Georges, father and grandfather of Fred. Little Fred himself was highly charmed, when told of it. Even little Wilhelmina, with her dolls, looked pleasantly demure on the occasion. So, it remained settled in fact, though not in form. And little Fred, a florid, milk-faced, foolish kind of boy, I guess, made presents to his little Prussian cousin, wrote bits of love letters to her, and all along afterwards fancied himself, and at length ardently enough became, her little lover and intended, always rather a little fellow, to which sentiments Wilhelmina signifies that she responded with the due maidenly indifference, but not in an offensive manner. After our Prussian Fritz's birth, the matter took a still closer form. You, dear Princess Caroline, you have now 2 little princesses again, either of whom might suit my little Fritzchen. Let us take Amelia, the second of them, who is nearest his age. Agreed, answered Princess Caroline again. Agreed, answered all the parties interested. And so it was settled that the marriage of Prussia to England should be a double one. Fred of Hanover and England to Wilhelmina, Fritz of Prussia to Amelia, and children and parents lived thenceforth in the constant understanding that such, in due course of years, was to be the case, though nothing yet was formally concluded by treaty upon it. Polnitz, italic, Memoiren, end italic, 2. 193. Queen Sophie Dorothy of Prussia was always eager enough for treaty and conclusion to her scheme. True to it, she, as needle to the pole in all weathers, sometimes in the wildest weather. Poor lady, nor did the Hanover Serene Highnesses, at any time, draw back or falter, but having very soon got wafted across to England, into new more complex conditions, and wider anxieties in that new country, they were not so impressively eager as Queen Sophie. On this interesting point, Electress Sophie, judicious great-grandmother, was not now there. Electress Sophie had died about a month before Queen Anne, and never saw the English Canaan, much as she had longed for it. George I, her son, a taciturn, rather splenetic elderly gentleman, very foreign in England, and oftenest rather sulky there and elsewhere, was not in a humor to be forward in that particular business. George I had got into quarrel with his Prince of Wales, Fred's father, him who is one day to be George II, always a rather foolish little prince, though his wife Caroline was wisdom's self in a manner. George I had other much more urgent cares than that of marrying his disobedient foolish little Prince of Wales's offspring, and he always pleaded difficulties, Acts of Parliament that would be needed, and the like, whenever Sophie Dorothy came to visit him at Hanover, and urged this matter. The taciturn, inarticulately thoughtful, rather sulky old gentleman, he had weighty burdens lying on him, felt fretted and galled, in many ways, and had found life, electoral and even royal, a deceptive sumptuosity, little better than a more or less extensive feast of shells, next to no real meat or drink left in it to the hungry heart of man. Wife sitting half frantic in the castle of Alden, waxing more and more into a gray-haired Magira, with whom Sophie Dorothy under 7 seals of secrecy corresponds a little, and even the Prince of Wales is suspected of wishing to correspond. A foolish, disobedient Prince of Wales, Jacobite pretender people with their Mar rebellions, with their Alberoni combinations, an English Parliament jangling and debating unmelodiously, whose very language is a mystery to us. Nothing but Walpole and Dog Latin to help us through it. Truly it is not a heaven on earth altogether, much as Mother Sophie and her foolish favourite, our disobedient Prince of Wales, might long for it. And the Hanover tale, the Robothons, Bernstorffs, Fabrices, even the Blackamoor Porters, they are not beautiful either, to a taciturn majesty of some sense, if he cared about their doings or them. Voracious, plunderous, all of them, like hounds, long hungry, got into a rich house which has no master, or a mere imaginary one. Menteris impudentissime, said Walpole in his Dog Latin once, in our royal presence. To one of these official plunderous gentlemen, "You tell an impudent lie," at which we only laughed. Horace Walpole. Italic Reminiscences of George I and George II. End italic, London, 1786. His Britannic Majesty by no means wanted sense. Had not his situation been incurably absurd? In his young time, he had served creditably enough against the Turks. Twice commanded the REICHS army in the Marlborough Wars, and did at least testify his indignation at the inefficient state of it. His foreign politics, so-called, were not madder than those of others. Bremen and Verdun he had bought a bargain, and it was natural to protect them by such resources as he had, English or other. Then there was the world spectre of the Pretender, stretching huge over creation, like the Brocken spectre in hazy weather, against whom how protect yourself? Except by cannonading for the Kaiser at Messina, by rushing into every Brabble that rose, and hiring the parties with money to fight it out well? It was the established method in that matter. Method not of George's inventing, nor did it cease with George. As to domestic politics, except it were to keep quiet, and eat what the gods had provided, one does not find that he had any. The sage Leibnitz would very fain have followed him to England, but, for reasons indifferently good, could never be allowed. If the truth must be told, the sage Leibnitz had a wisdom which now looks dreadfully like that of a wiseacre. In mathematics, even, he did invent the differential calculus. But it is certain also he never could believe in Newton's system of the universe, nor would read the Principia at all. For the rest, he was in quarrel about Newton with the Royal Society here. Ill seen, it is probable, by this sage and the other, to the Hanover official gentlemen devouring their English dead-horse. It did not appear that his presence could be useful in these parts. Gerauer. Italic, Gottfried Freiherr von Leibniz. Eine Biographie ent Italic, Breslau, 1842. Kerr of Kersland. Italic, Memoirs of Secret Transactions, and Italic, London, 1727. Nor are the Hanover womankind his Majesty has about him, quasi-wives or not, of a soul-entrancing character. Far indeed from that. Two in chief there are, a fat and a lean. The lean, called Maypole by the English populace, is Duchess of Kendal, with excellent pension. In the English peerage, Schulenburg, the former German name of her, decidedly a quasi-wife, influential, against her will, in that sad Königsmarck tragedy, at Hanover long since, who is fallen thin and old, Maypole, or bare hoppole, with the leaves all stripped, lean, long, hard, though. She once had her summer vergers too, and still, as an old quasi-wife, or were it only as an old article of furniture, has her worth to the royal mind. Schulenburgs, kindred of hers, are high in the military line, some of whom we may meet. Then besides this lean one, there is a fat, of whom Walpole, Horace, who had seen her in boyhood, gives description. Big staring black eyes, with rim of circular eyebrow, like a coach wheel round its nave, very black the eyebrows also. Vast red face, cheeks running into neck blending indistinguishably with stomach, a mere cataract of fluid tallow, skinned over and curiously dizened, according to Walpole's portraiture. This charming creature, Kielmansegge by German name, was called Countess of Darlington in this country with excellent pension, as was natural. They all had pensions. Even Queen Sophie, Dorothy, I have noticed in our state paper office, has her small pension, £800 a year, on the Irish establishment. Irish establishment will never miss such a pittance for our poor child, and it may be useful over yonder. This Kielmansegge, Countess of Darlington, was, and is, believed by the gossiping English to have been a second simultaneous mistress of His Majesty's, but seems, after all, to have been his half-sister, and nothing more. Half-sister, due to Gentleman Ernst and a Countess Platen of bad Hanover fame. Grown dreadfully fat, but not without shrewdness, perhaps affection, and worth something in this dull foreign country. Mere cataract of animal oils as she has become. These two are the amount of His Britannic Majesty's resources in that matter. Resources surely not extensive, after all. His Britannic Majesty's Day, in St. James's, is not of an interesting sort to him, and every evening he comes precisely at a certain hour to drink beer, seasoned with a little tobacco, and the company of these two women, drinks diligently in a sipping way, says Horace, and smokes, with such dull speech as there may be, not till he is drunk, but only perceptibly drunkish, raised into a kind of cloudy narcotic Olympus, and opaquely superior to the ills of life, in which state he walks uncomplainingly to bed. Government, when it can by any art be avoided, he rarely meddles with, shows a rugged sagacity, where he does, and must meddle, consigns it to Walpole in dog Latin, laughs at his Mentirus. This is the first George, first triumph of the constitutional principle, which has since gone to such sublime heights among us, heights which we at last begin to suspect might be depths, leading down. All men now ask, whitherwards? A much-admired invention in its time, that of letting go the rudder, or setting a wooden figure expensively dressed to take charge of it, and discerning that the ship would sail of itself so much more easily, which it will, if a peculiarly good sea-boat, in certain kinds of sea, for a time, till the Sinbad magnetic mountains begin to be felt pulling, or the circles of Charybdis get you in their sweep. And then what an invention it was! This, we say, is the new sovereign man, whom the English people, being in some perplexity about the Pope and other points, have called in from Hanover, to walk before them in the ways of heroism, and by command and by example guide heavenwards their affairs and them. And they hope that he will do it, or perhaps that their affairs will go thither of their own accord. Always a singular people. Poor George, careless of these ulterior issues, has always trouble enough with the mere daily details, parliamentary insolences, Jacobite plottings, South Sea bubbles, and wishes to hunt, when he gets over to Hanover, rather than to make marriage treaties. Besides, as Wilhelmina tells us, they have filled him with lies. These Hanover women and their emissaries. Your Princess Wilhelmina is a monster of ill temper, crooked in the back, and what not, say they. If there is to be a marriage, double or single, these improper females must first be persuaded to consent. Italic, Memoirs de Berriath. End italic. Difficulties enough. And there is none to help. Friedrich Wilhelm cares little about the matter, though he has given his yes, since you will. But Sophie Dorothy is diligent and urgent, by all opportunities, and, at length, in 1723, the conjuncture is propitious. Domestic Jacobitism, in the shape of Bishop Atterbury, has got itself well banished. Alberoni and his big schemes, years ago they are blown into outer darkness. Charles XII is well dead, and of our Bremen and Verdun no question henceforth. Even the Kaiser's spectre hunt, or Spanish duel, is at rest for the present, and the Congress of Cambrai is sitting, or trying all it can to sit, at home or abroad. There is nothing, not even Wood's Irish halfpence, as yet making noise. And on the other hand, Tsar Peter is rumored, not without foundation, to be coming westward, with some huge armament, which, whether intended for Sweden or not, renders a Prussian alliance doubly valuable. And so now at last, in this favorable aspect of the stars, King George, over at Herrenhausen, was by much management of his daughter Sophie's, and after many hitches, brought to the mark. And Friedrich Wilhelm came over too, ostensibly to bring home his queen, but in reality to hear his father-in-law's compliance to the double marriage, for which his Prussian Majesty is willing enough. If others are willing, praise be heaven, King George has agreed to everything. Consents, One propitious day, autumn 1723. Day not otherwise dated. Tsar Peter's armament. And the questionable aspects in France, perhaps quickening his volitions a little. Upon which Friedrich Wilhelm and Queen Sophie have returned home, content in that matter, and expect shortly his Britannic Majesty's countervisit, to perfect the details.